But we begin with the January 6th hearing and that testimony about Donald Trump's angry reaction to the Supreme Court's refusal to participate in his attempts to overturn the election. Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger told that story.
On December 11th, Trump's allies lost a lawsuit in the U.S. Supreme Court that he regarded as his last chance at success in the courts. A newly obtained Secret Service message from that day shows how angry President Trump was about the outcome. Quote, "Just FYI, POTUS is pissed. Breaking news, Supreme Court denied his lawsuit. He is livid now." Cassidy Hutchinson, an aide to Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, was present for that conversation and described it in this way.
This is the day that the Supreme Court had rejected that case. Mr. Meadows and I were in the White House residence at a Christmas reception. And as we were walking back from the Christmas reception that evening, the president was walking out of the Oval Office, so we crossed paths in the Rose Garden colonnade. The president was fired up about the Supreme Court decision. And so I was standing next to Mr. Meadows, but I stepped back, so I was probably 2-3 feet catty corner from him, diagonal from him. The president's just raging about the decision and how it's wrong and why didn't we make more calls, and just his typical anger outburst at this decision. And the president said, he had said something to the effect of, "I don't want people to know we lost, Mark. This is embarrassing. Figure it out. We need to figure it out. I don't want people to know that we lost."
The point of that testimony in the case of the January 6th committee was making today was that Donald Trump knew that he lost the election. That was the point of that testimony. Establishing that Donald Trump knew that he lost the election is a crucial element in proving everything Donald Trump did to overturn the election was intentionally criminal, including his phone call to the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, demanding that the secretary find 11,000 votes for Donald Trump. A recording of that phone call was played once again today by the January 6th committee, and we will be covering more on that later in this hour. But there is another element of Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony that you just heard. Her description of Donald Trump's anger about the Supreme Court decision that is worth zooming in on, a phrase we should zoom in on. She said the president was just raging about the decision and how it's wrong, and why didn't we make more calls? And just this typical anger outburst at this decision. Why didn't we make more calls about a Supreme Court decision? Calls to whom? Why didn't we make more calls to the Supreme Court? Does that mean calls to Supreme Court justices appointed by Donald Trump? Does that mean calls to Supreme Court clerks? Does that mean calls to Virginia Thomas, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, who we know from her text messages was in constant communication with White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows in her attempts to illegally overturn the election? Donald Trump just lost in the Supreme Court, and he's angrily asking, why didn't we make more calls? It has been established that Donald Trump knows that Mark Meadows was in constant communication with the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. Did Donald Trump order Mark Meadows to call Virginia Thomas to try to interfere with the Supreme Court decision? Did Mark Meadows obey such an order if he was given one? Or did he defy such an order if he was given one? Is this one of the many reasons why Mark Meadows has fought a subpoena to testify to the January 6th committee? Why didn't we make more calls about a Supreme Court decision? Some of the most striking new evidence in today's hearing was the video recorded by Speaker Nancy Pelosi's daughter while the congressional leadership was gathered at Fort McNair, 2 miles from the Capitol.
You know what? We have got to finish the proceedings, or else it would have had a complete victory. There has to be some way we can maintain the sense that people have that there's some security or some confidence that government can function and that we can elect the President of the United States. Did we go back into session?
We did go back into session, but now apparently everybody on the floor is putting on tear gas masks to prepare for a breach. Well, I'm trying to get more
They're
information.
putting on their,
Tear gas masks.
I'm going to call up the effing Secretary of DOD. We have some senators who are still in their hideaways. They need massive personnel now. Can you get the Maryland National Guard to come too?
I have something to say, Mr. Secretary. Well, I'm going to call the mayor of Washington, D.C. right now and see what other outreach he has to other police departments, as Senator Leader Hoyer has mentioned. Hi, Governor. This is Nancy. Governor, I don't know if you have been approached about the Virginia National Guard. Mr. Hoyer was speaking to Governor Hogan, but I still think you probably need the okay of the federal government in order to come into another jurisdiction. Thank you.
Secretary of the Army.
Oh my gosh, they're just breaking windows. They're doing all kinds of. It's really that they said somebody was shot. It's just horrendous, and all at the instigation of the President of the United States. Okay, thank you, Governor. I appreciate what you're doing, and if you don't mind, I'd like to stay in touch. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Virginia Guard has been called in.
You know, I'm just talking to Governor Northam, and what he said is they sent 200 state police and a unit of the National Guard. They're breaking windows and going in, obviously ransacking our offices and all the rest of that. That's nothing. The concern we have about personal harm, personal safety is it just transcends everything. But the fact is, on any given day, they're breaking the law in many different ways. And quite frankly, much of it at the instigation of the President of the United States. And now, if he could at least somebody.
Yeah, why don't you get the president to tell them to leave the Capitol, Mr. Attorney General, in your law enforcement responsibility? A public statement, they should all leave.